Let me begin. So good morning again. So myself, Swaminathan, and I'm associated with Schneider Electric. And so just I will give brief intro about myself. So I started my career with control and automation. So I worked on industrial automation for a few sand plant automation in foundry and airport baggage handling system. Like I have commissioned the Singapore Terminal 3. Completely the baggage handling system, and also in-flight catering system. Like inside the flight we get a lot of eatables, like food items. So that will be managed through in-flight catering system using the roller conveyors. So that so I worked in Dubai International Airport, and few process automation for the Brakes India Limited. It's like a complete the brakes line process automation. And a few vertical car parking system. It's like a cars, you can park cars in 3-story. So that is also one of the interesting system I worked on. So after that, I moved on to power generation. So in power generation, it was combined cycle power plant. The combined cycle power plants are it's like so gas turbines and steam turbines will be there together. So gas turbines basically are not self-starting. So you need to turn the gas turbine using alternate, like synchronous motion. So you know that the generator and turbine will be coupled together. So you power the generator. So generator will run as a motor and turn the turbine. Once it reaches 75% of its nominal speed, so then turbine will be fired. Then your that generator, power supply to generator will be taken off, and then it will start to produce alternating current. So that I worked on one of the larger power plant in Italy, which is of 600 megawatt capacity. 600 megawatt, 4 turbines, like 3 gas turbine and 1 steam turbine. Like so, whatever the gas turbine, they will fire 3 gas turbine. So whatever the gas comes out, like the steam comes out, that will be used to fire the last steam turbine. So that was very challenging and interesting one. And then few other plants in Iran, Qatar, and Belgium. After that, I moved into power technology domain, like the product development. So I worked on the generator circuit breaker monitoring, standalone imaging unit, a few substation automation, commissioning tool, all that. So in the generator circuit breaker monitoring is something, again, is a very interesting one. That generator circuit breaker is a very huge one. The generators are of capacity, say like a 20 megawatt generator will be there. So the power will be 20 megawatt, the voltage will be somewhere 1.1 kV, something like that. So that will be the capacity of your circuit breaker as well. So what happened in one of the site in Belgium? So the circuit breaker blasted. So there'll be one fixed contact on moving contact in the circuit breaker. So the moving contact was blown away from the chamber. Fortunately, no casualty. But so that opened up a question like why it happened. So then we found like this. So the moving contact will open close, no? So you know the difference between switchgear and circuit breaker. I hope all of you familiar with the switchgear, difference between switchgear and circuit breaker. The circuit breaker, so the main difference is when it is carrying the nominal current, you can rupture the circuit. You can open it so that the circuit will be ruptured or broken. Whereas in the switchgear, you are not allowed to do it when there is a load. When there is no load, that time only you are allowed to open the circuit. So on load condition, you are not allowed to open. Otherwise, it will lead to accident. There will be huge arc flash, and the flashover will lead to a lot of equipment damage. So in this case, since it was opened on load continuously, the moving contact subjected to corrosion, because so when you open at that when it is carrying full load, so it will subject to corrosion. So due to corrosion, its length will reduce. So like for example, if you have a 10-inch moving contact, so then 10-inch will become 9-inch, 8-inch, like that. It will gradually reduce due to corrosion. So when the length is less, arc will be more. So then there was a huge thrust developed inside the chamber. Then the moving contact was thrown out. So we solved that problem by introducing the cumulative current monitoring algorithm. Like whenever you open with the full load current, so there will be the coefficient, the conductor coefficient, how much it will rupture. So using that, so we estimated the life, and then it will tell when it is due for retrofit or service or repair, so that the operating the maintenance team can do the proper periodic maintenance, so that will prevent any accident. So then after that, I moved into renewable space in Schneider Electric. So in renewables, I'm part of solar division, where we work on product development for both all the three segments, like commercial, the utility, large scale inverters, and then commercial and rooftop inverters, and then residential inverters. Also on grid and off grid. So in my presentation, I would like to cover more on the overview of energy industry, like energy domain. So rather than strictly jumping into like grid tied inverter, off grid inverter, all that. So that literature is available. Plenty of literatures are available. You can go through that. But this insight, what I feel, it will be more interesting, and that will make you think a lot and see what is the opportunity or what is the problem in front of us. Then accordingly, we can pick up which area is resonating with your passion. Then you can carry on. I hope you are with me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let me go ahead. Yeah. So this is a. Okay. So you know. So this slide gives you like what is that the energy outlook in front of us. So I have two bar chart. One is the energy consumption, another one is electricity consumption. I hope you are familiar with the energy and electricity. So if I'm allowed to ask question, I would like to know the answer from any of the participant. What is energy? What is electricity? Anyone would like to answer? What is energy? What is electricity? Or I would say, what is the difference between these two? No? Okay. Let me answer this, but this is very basic. I hope you are all familiar with that. So, energy is nothing but what we consume. Or I would say, like for example, I have a fan. That fan, if 1 hour it runs, it consumes 1 unit of electricity, 1 unit of energy. Sorry. So that is energy. That is power into time. That is energy. Electricity is nothing but only power. So I hope you got the difference. So the energy consumption, so like in terawatt hour, you see here the figures. 2016 it was 93,400, and down the line by 2040 it's going to be 133,000. And so this is by one agency, like International Energy Agency. Another agency, Shell and the Sky, together they did the survey, and their prediction is 123,000. So you mean like so the growth is 40%. Easily, I would say 40% there's a growth prospect. No industry grows at this rate. Even auto industry or financial sector, even our GDP, our income, nothing grows at 40%. You can see the difference. Everything grows at 8%, 9%, 12% in that range only. But whereas on the contrary, energy industry is going to grow at 40%. So that is like we are in the right space, and it's a humongous problem in front of us, or humongous challenge in front of us, which needs a solution. So you guys are future engineers, so you have a very bright opportunity in front of you. Whereas when it comes to electricity, so electricity demand is so not 40%, I would say, but it's relatively less. But still, the demand is there. So like it's going to grow at a higher rate. So 20,200 is the current thing, but it's going to grow by 35,000 and 43,000 by two different forecast. So now you know what is the future ahead in the energy industry. And so presently, if you see here, what is the contribution from different sources to meet today's energy demand? Renewables are there, coal, gas, oil, and other fuels. So all put together is coming to 95,400 is the energy. So what is the future of electricity? How it is going to be? So we saw in the previous slide as well the composition of energy by different sources, but here with the timeline we are seeing, like from 1970, if you take so far, say like for even till 2020, coal is having majority of the share, and then gas is also there little bit. Oil gradually going down because only captive power plants are having oil generation. All other plants are mostly not with oil. Nuclear also gradually is decreasing. Nuclear was gaining momentum in 90s, late 90s and 2000, but now it's going down because the world saw the other side of nuclear. Like in Japan, we had a major accident in 2011 with the tsunami. That the Fukushima power plant was subjected to major atomic explosion. And even in Europe, the Chernobyl met with an accident. So that also opened up a new market for renewable space. Hydro again, like hydro is though sustainable, but we don't get water. So year on year, the water is depleting. Water availability of water is depleting. So dependency on idle plant may not be sustainable because of scarcity of water, and also the global warming, all that. Wind and solar, yes, it's gradually gaining momentum, and it's going to take more than 48% in another 30 years. So the renewable or non-conventional energy is going to be the future. So that is another important element I want to highlight here. And by going renewable, like if we see like our electricity is more from renewable source, then it will not be centralized. For example, if you take the number of power plants in India or Karnataka, you can count with your fingers. Like so some atomic power plants, there are few atomic power plants, there are few hydro plants and thermal plants are there, and also there are few state-owned generating plants, and the governments and central government-owned generating power plants are there. So today all are bulk in size, so they generate in one location, and they take it to the consumer place through transmission line. So that is a conventional or traditional method of generation. But this is going to change by having solar and wind. Solar is highly decentralized. It's not you can have a utility scale power plant also. Like the Pavagada is another example. The Pavagada is the largest solar farm in India. It's just, I don't remember the exact size of a Pavagada plant, but it's just a very big. You can have like a 5 megawatt or 10 megawatt solar farm. So that is utility scale. But whereas the conventional energy, like a hydel plant or thermal plant or atomic plant, it will be of 600 megawatt, 500 megawatt, 200 megawatt like that. But solar farm, it will not go to that scale, but definitely it can go to 10 megawatt or 20 megawatt like that. But majority of solar installations are decentralized. Like I have a house, I have a roof space of 2000 square feet, and then I can put a plant for 10 kilowatt. So I can put up a panel in my rooftop, and then I can generate 10 kilowatt of electricity. And then based on irradiation and the inverter efficiency, my energy will be dependent. So like that, every household start to put up a plant in their rooftop. So then it will be more distributed rather than centralized. So the more and more the power generation is distributed, more will be the complexity we are adding to the system. We will discuss about that. So by 2050, 50% of total electricity will come from renewable space. So that is the forecast. So that renewable will be like a majority of the renewable. We can split it into category. One is solar, another one is wind. So wind and solar is going to take a total share of renewable. Biomass and other things are the fuel cell, but it's all very meager in numbers. But these two will take a major share. Okay, so I mentioned that traditionally the electricity generation is owned by utility companies. So if it is in Bangalore, it's BESCOM, or BESCOM is a distribution company, but generation is that Karnataka electricity company. So I don't know exact the legal name of it. So but it's owned by state government, and few are owned by PSU, like central government, like NTPC. NTPC is another PSU. Even the Atomic Energy Commission of India. So they own few certain power generation plant, and state literally owns certain generating plants. So this is going to change. It's not going to be the same going forward. In another 30 years, it's going to change. Like now, current system is consumer market. Like there is a producer, there is a consumer. For example, we are consumer because every household is consuming electricity, and only provider is BESCOM. BESCOM is the only provider, and all households are consumers. But the future is, if I have a solar plant, then I will not be a consumer. I will be a prosumer. Prosumer is the new terminology, which is going to be the trend. So prosumer is I'm a consumer, at the same time I'm a producer also. I produce electricity, also I consume electricity. I take part in the common system. Like for example, so I have a 10 kilowatt generation in my premises, but my consumption is only 3 kilowatt. So 7 kilowatt is surplus for me. So what I do, the 7 kilowatt surplus, I sell it to the utility company, and then they will use it for so their other customers. On the contrary, I am producing 10 kilowatt, but my consumption is 15 kilowatt. So I need 5 kilowatt more. So I can buy that 5 kilowatt more from the utility company. So that is called the prosumer. I can sell and I can buy. So I can participate in the entire energy ecosystem. So that is going to be the future here. That is called prosumer revolution. What it will do, how it will benefit us. So this will make energy access affordable for everyone. Like for example, you see, like from the population perspective, India is the second most populous country, but America, I don't know the number exactly, maybe 5 or 6 or something. Within 10, America will come. But the per capita energy consumption is very, very high. That is, the America has highest or largest per capita energy consumption. So they consume more energy per individual in their country. Whereas in India, it's very, very less. You know the reason? The reason is, one is affordability, another one availability. So these two are the major contributor. Like not everyone is affordable to get the electricity, and not everyone is, though people are having money, but they don't have access in the remote location. For example, in Himachal Pradesh and northeast states, so there are many remote locations are not having access to electricity. So that is one problem. And even if there is access, affordability. See, I can, like, the temperature is now, we are in summer, the temperature is increasing, but I can't keep my air condition always running. So I will turn on my air conditioning system only in the night time when I want to sleep. Other time I manage with a fan, or I just keep my windows open so that the natural breeze will make me comfortable. Because this is not affordable. I can't run my air conditioning system 24/7 because I end up paying huge electricity bill every month. So the affordability comes here. So by having prosumer revolution, you will have a mix of energy, like energy from the prosumer, energy from the utility companies, all mixed together. So then the and also the prosumer revolution will make one more thing possible, like I will optimize my energy consumption. Like, in a sense, for example, selling and buying rates may not be the same. Like when I generate electricity, that time I will sell at 5 rupees per unit. When I buy, that may be 9 rupees per unit. So if that is the case, what I will do, I will time my consumption, so that when I generate more electricity from solar, that time I will consume all my electricity needs. Like my washing machine will run during that time, my dishwasher will run during that my time. So when I produce energy, because I will not end up paying more, my electricity bill will be optimized. So this prosumer revolution will enable this also. I hope you guys are with me. So we discussed what is prosumer revolution. So this is opening up a lot of opportunity for us. You know, like you guys would have studied the parallel operation of generators. So there are three methods. One is a Dark-Law method, Bright-Law method, and Swinburne-Stress, that one. So whereas when you have a solar inverter at your premises, so the parallel operation happens automatically. We can't do all this experiment and time it properly and connect. So every inverter will automatically synchronize with the utility grid, which means the generator which is in the utility side. With that, it will synchronize. You know how much of complexity it will bring in. And in India, power will go and come. It's a highly unreliable. Anytime it will go, anytime it will come. So you need to maintain the stability. So we should be our system should be capable of managing this complexity. In Bangalore, say like 1 lakh independent houses are coming with a solar plant, rooftop solar plant, and they are going to pump energy to the grid. So then when there is a bright sunlight, everyone will be peaking. Every household will be on its peak generation. So then the grid will see higher incoming electricity. The load is not the same. So like if the load is also not increasing at the same time, so then automatically there will be a grid imbalance. So your system should be capable of managing that. So automatically you should reduce the generation on the utility side so that it will be managed. So you can maintain the grid stability. So that is going to be a major challenge. So the utility companies will face. So this opens up a lot of opportunities for us. So the lot of opportunities are a lot of problems to be solved. So always, there's proverb, need is the mother of invention. Any invention, no invention has come just like that. There is a need. There is a problem to be addressed. So when you attempt to solve that problem, then that will become an invention. You take it, any invention, like even aircraft, how aircraft came. So the people wanted to commute from one place to another place very fast. Even the electric engine, diesel engine, train, everything was invented to address some problem. So now this problem, like increase in growth or increase in demand, energy demand, is a problem. problem. That is, the managing increase in demand is a problem statement. So how we solve? So you can see that emerging trend like smart grid, microgrid, and then the tariff-based consumption, time-based tariff. Like today, Uber, Ola, and all, they are charging based on the surge pricing is there. If you travel by train, for example, if you're from Hubli, you are coming to city station. Before reaching city station, if you check Uber from city station to your place, it will show some price. The moment you get down at the city station and check, the prices will be more because everyone will start to try. So then they will see that the aggregator will see the demand. So my demand is increasing. But same time, I have only 10 cabs are available, but 20 people are asking for a cab. So then they will increase the pricing. Here, electricity, that energy system also, energy industry also will see the similar scenario. In developed countries already it is there. Like peak time, if you consume, then your tariff will be different. Off peak time, if you consume, your tariff will be different. But in India, that is not the case. So our tariff is a fixed one. Only the slab-based tariff. Like first 100 unit there will be tariff. Second 100 unit different tariff. Next 100, anything above 200 will be different tariff like that. But it's not time-based. Say like evening 6 to 9, if I consume, then my tariff per unit tariff will be 25 rupees. Whereas after 11 o'clock, if I consume, after 11 o'clock at night, if I consume, my tariff will be 5 rupees. So that time demand will be less. We are not in that system, but soon it's going to become like that. So that's the reason it says enormous opportunities on both sides of the meter. Like both sides of the meter, you have energy meter. So energy meter, so we are on one side of the meter, like on consumption. Like we consume, like from utility side, from Bescom, the connection is there. That is left side of the meter is Bescom, right side of the meter is end user. So both the side, we have lot of opportunities or lot of problems to be solved. I'm saying instead of opportunities, you can look at it as opportunity, or in layman's language, it's a problem. So that problem to be solved. So since all are electrical engineers, so you guys can imagine what type of problems and what are all the possible solutions for solving that. So the only way ahead is seize the opportunities. How you can seize the opportunities? Go digital. For example, like so 10 years before, I can't turn on my ceiling fan or tube light or my printer from my mobile. I have to physically go to the switch where it is located and turn on or turn off. But today, a lot of Bluetooth enabled devices are there, Wi-Fi enabled devices are there. I can turn off from anywhere, even if from my office, I can turn off my ceiling fan. By mistake, I forgot to turn it off before leaving or before locking my house. So there are systems which will notify you that hey, your ceiling fan is running, nobody is there. Still, you want to keep it on, then I can turn it off. This is for a household. The same will be for big buildings, shopping mall, hospital complex, office complex, and same will be there for industries. By going digital, you can address a lot of issues. So that is the way. Like these opportunities, go digital.
Hello. Yeah,
Any
sir.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, we had one question like a few minutes back. Instead of decreasing load at peak solar generation, can't there be a battery farm like solar farm?
Absolutely, that is another solution. Like say when you have your generation is more than the demand, you should have a storage system. Store it. I'll give you an example. Like Germany. Germany is a European country who started going solar long back. I would say 15 years back they started. They started this solar revolution. and they started giving subsidy for putting up a solar plant in your house. And then, so today they reached kind of self-sufficiency with renewable energy. So they are taking down all their atomic power plants so that they will be more renewable. So what happened? So since everyone started putting up the plant because government was promoting that and giving a lot of subsidy. So then, like 2-3 years before, on a given summer day, their generation was 20 gigawatt. That is, the peak generation was 20 gigawatt, which is way ahead of their demand or consumption. So what happened? So then the utility company realized that so they started getting surplus energy than the demand. So they wanted to optimize that or reduce that. So then, but they said they stopped all the subsidy. So so that's why in Germany the renewable growth started. The pace has reduced. At the same time, they started telling people that whatever you generate, you consume. I don't want to buy. So what they did, the buying price they reduced. So I generate energy and I have to consume. If I sell, I will sell at a very meager price. But at the same time, when I want to buy, I pay more money for a utility company. So automatically the user will think, why should I sell at a lower price? So I will store it, and during when there is no sunlight, when there is no solar generation, that time I will discharge my battery and consume it. So now that opened up another industry, that the storage industry started booming after that. So that again gave us a lithium-ion battery. All the while we were using lead-acid battery, so now lithium-ion battery has come. So lithium-ion is space-wise, it occupies less space, no maintenance, more life. Cost is also gradually decreasing. Year on year, it's decreasing. 1 kilowatt hour is somewhere today it's $100. It's soon it will go to $75. That's the forecast. Definitely, we can store it and consume it. So that is storage industry also booming. Did I answer your question? Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, he has
Yes, please.
replied. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. He has replied. Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. So keep asking questions. So that will be very. That will make both of us interact instead of monotonous presentation. So suppose imagine you are employed in an electricity company. What will be your role as an electricity company? So as an electricity company, like like a COP21. So a few years back, there was a environmental summit happened in France. So that's when the COP21 was the referendum. All the countries agreed for that COP21 agreement. What it says, every country committed to contribute for global warming, to reduce the global warming, which means carbon dioxide reduction in CO2 emission. How you can reduce CO2 emission? By reducing your fossil fuel consumption, like petrol, diesel, coal, all that fossil fuel comes under fossil fuel, and that will have a lot of toxic emission. So every country gave a commitment or took up the commitment to reduce, contribute for CO2 emission. So in that context only, India also set a renewable energy target. Like India set some 100 gigawatt electricity something, but India reached 4 years ahead of the target. Like 2016 itself, they achieved the target. Then 20 gigawatt was a target, and the 20 gigawatt by 2020 they set the target, but we achieved by 2016 itself. So then we revised the target to 100 gigawatt. So that is the pace of India's renewable growth. Again, this growth came from a lot of subsidy. Like government introduced a lot of subsidy. That subsidy motivated everyone to go for renewable. Okay, so as an electricity company or as a government, responsible government, so we have a mandate to reduce the carbon dioxide emission. That is possible only when you go greener generation. So your generation should be on through greener, like non-conventional or renewable sources, which will not have any emission. So that is one. And then it should be sustainable. Sustainable in the sense, it should not create any harm for the society or globe. Then higher efficiency. The efficiency also plays a major role here. The centralized generation was leading to lower efficiency. Right? So you generate from Para, like for example, from Pavagada you are generating and bringing it to Bangalore. So you need to, the electricity, whatever you generate, will have to travel more than 100 or 150 kilometer distance. So in that, there will be losses in the transmission line. So your efficiency, like what you generate and what you consume at the end user side, so there will be huge loss. But whereas with the prosumer system, I generate locally, I consume locally, so my efficiency will be very high. There is no, I will not end up losing electricity or power in the transmission because I don't have to carry it for longer distance. So that is efficiency. And also this is on the electricity, that the generation, transmission, and utilization side. And also on the equipment side, also efficiency is increasing year on year. For example, tube light. Take tube light. Tube light was 40 watts. Like when I was studying, I have there was a lab experiment for me to wire a tube light, normal fluorescent tube light, 40-watt tube light. There will be a choke, starter, and bulb. So I need to do the wiring and power it up. So then it will consume 40 watts, and it will give some lumens, like some 20 lumens will be the luminous intensity out of that tube light. Today we don't use that tube light. Like many people will not know what is choke or what is starter, what is the purpose of choke and starter, or how the tube light will work. Many people will not know today because we have gone with the LED tube light or CFL based tube light. So that is a new technology. You don't need a choke. It's all electronic ballast. They use electronic ballast inside. And wattage also it has reduced. Earlier it was a 40-watt tube light. Today it's a 10-watt, 12-watt, 20-watt, like that. We are getting higher luminous intensity out of it. So that shows the efficiency. And today we started rating the equipments with 3-star, 2-star, 5-star based on the energy consumption. Like today fridges are coming with a 4-star rating, 3-star rating. 4-star rated fridges will be very expensive because it will consume very less energy. Ceiling fan. So not like the decorative ceiling fan will have a less star. Normal ceiling fan, it will have a bland look. That will have a 4-star or 5-star. If being an electrical engineer, if you ask me to buy an appliance, I will look for a 3-star or 4-star or higher star. I will not look for color, design, all that. So I'm least bothered about the design and color. What I'm concerned about the efficiency, conversion efficiency, which is having better conversion efficiency. I go for it. Even if it have some dirty look, I don't mind, because on the long run, I will save electricity, I save money. So these three are kind of mandate in front of us. We have to go greener, and it should be sustainable, and it should have better conversion efficiency or higher efficiency. So basic electricity is a human right. Yes, today not everyone is having access to electricity. So we need to work towards it. Like in world population today is 700. So like I don't know exactly what is the world population, but 7 billion or more than 30% not having access to electricity. And whoever has access to electricity, that is not sustainable. That is also another problem. Today, what we get, it's not from renewable source, it's from fossil fuel. So again, that will have a repercussion that it will pollute our environment. So like you guys might have seen that during lockdown time that our index, that air quality index was very high, and it's livable. Even like in India, Delhi is the most polluted city. Even Delhi, that air quality index was very high, and even I saw in news, like from Jalandhar, people were able to see Himalayan mountain. like 100+ kilometers away from Himalayan mountain, but they have never experienced this before during lockdown because no vehicles were operating, or no factories, industry where all the industries were closed. So that reduced pollution, and then they were able to see that, which means what we are consuming today is not a sustainable source of energy. It's unsustainable. So 1.3 billion are not having access to electricity.
Sir, before we start this, there's a question which has come up.
Yeah.
From Mr. Raghavendra Prabhu. Can you compare DC versus AC solar systems?
Yes, DC versus AC solar system. Like for example, DC basically the solar is the photovoltaic is a DC. Okay, so from DC only we are converting DC to AC and then connecting. You know the reason? Because our electricity system is an AC electricity system, and all the loads are AC in nature. For example, take a laptop. So laptop, your adapter is like you can connect it to the common plug socket in AC socket in your house, and then it draws AC, convert into DC, and then internally it's a DC load only. But you are converting DC to AC. That's why there are a lot of studies going on having DC microgrid with the DC microgrid, AC microgrid, hybrid microgrid like that. So definitely you can go with the AC system for these type of appliances. Like your laptop can be powered by DC bus. Even all your electronic system can be powered by DC source because internally it's operate on a DC power supply. So though you connect to the AC socket, so there is the adapter converts AC to DC. You can do that, but you know the AC and DC has a lot of pros and cons. For example, if you have to carry this DC for a longer distance, DC will have a higher loss in comparison to AC. That is one. Second thing, you can't do that step up, step down. The transformer will not work with the DC. AC will have that step up, step down. Because again, if you want to take it for longer distance, again, I take the PowerGrid as example. In PowerGrid, you are generating some 10 megawatt of electricity. If you want to take it to another place which is 150 kilometers far, so then you can't step up and then step down. Whereas in the case of AC, easily you can do that. So these are all the drawbacks. But yes, for certain loads, DC will be more efficient because I can avoid double conversion. One side photovoltaic, I'm converting DC to AC and pumping to connecting to grid, and then for my appliance, again I have an adapter that converts AC to DC again and using as a DC. So this double conversion, definitely there will be a loss. My first conversion will have some 2% loss. Second conversion will add up another 2%, end up 4 to 5% total loss. By using direct DC, definitely I can save electricity. But again, that will not become universal system. You can have a DC bus. You can establish a DC bus within your house or within the premises, and then connect all your DC load directly to the DC bus. But it will not be universal. So, like for example, I have this laptop. I'm using it at my home. So at my home, if I establish DC bus, I can use that. But when I carry this laptop to my office or some other location, there the same DC bus may not be there. So I need to connect to the AC system. So to make it universal, we are using double conversion. But definitely that is also going to change, and there are a lot of studies going on. Comparatively, DC bus is more efficient for certain loads, but the AC system is more beneficial for system loads. So soon we will see AC system and the DC system both will coexist. That is also another area. Definitely someone can take it up and do a lot of studies and come up with a solution proposal. Okay.
Yes, I think that has answered this question. Yeah, we can continue.
Okay. Good. So again, so as we said, the electricity, access to electricity is a basic human right. So today, more than 1.3 billion people are not having access. So we need to work towards giving them access. So in next 40 years, how our energy industry will look like? So the consumption is increasing by 50%, and so we need to reduce the emission by 2 times. Like today, if it is some X amount, X by 2 should be the target, and then it has to be more efficient, 3 times more efficient. So that is a problem statement. Like one side you are so that is, you have to see it as a 3-dimensional object. One side your demand is increasing by 50%. Other side you need to reduce your emission by 2 times and increase the efficiency by 3 times. So all put together, it adds a lot of complexity. It's a very complex system. You need to crack it. And our world is becoming more and more electric. Everything is becoming electric. Like for example, if I have to say, so 10 years before, I did not have washing machine. I did not have a dishwasher at my home. So today I have washing machine and dishwasher because I want to be more independent. Like I don't want be dependent on my maid, or even I don't have time to do all this on by myself. So I added this. So now during the lockdown, so the maids were not allowed to come in, and we were thinking, why don't we buy a robotic cleaner, floor cleaner, like Jadu Puja Kele. So like we can go for a robotic. Dyson has a cleaner, so you just turn it on. Overnight it will clean, and then next day morning your floor will be fully cleaned. So the world is going more and more electric. So this is from a household perspective. From the industry perspective, it's even more rapid in terms of electrification. So like everything is going electric. And then more connected devices. Few years before, we never had any connected devices with us. All were wirely connected. Like if I have my computer, desktop computer, I have to connect the Ethernet cable. Then only I was having access to the other side of the world. But today that is not the case. So I myself have 3 or 4 devices connected. So I have a mobile phone, I have a smartwatch, and so I have my own tablet with me, iPad, and even a laptop if I carry a laptop. So all put together 4 or 5 devices for one person. Even today, kids are having their own tab. Everyone has some more connected devices. So this is going to like by 2020, already we are in 2020. So like 50 billion devices, connected devices will be there. So you can see the crowd. And then our electricity will be more distributed. So this we discussed. And then we need to be more efficient. So this is one aspect. When it comes to the cost, the price is declining. In 2020, the solar cost was very, very high. But today, it has come down. I would say it has come down by 25%, 20 to 25%. It has reduced. You know why? Because demand is increasing. That is first reason. Whenever there is a demand, and when we do mass production, your cost will come down. So when first day of lockdown, one mask was costing some 50 rupees. Today, mask is available for 10 rupees or 5 rupees. The reason for that is the mass production. Even sanitizer was not available when lockdown started. Today, sanitizer was available left and right. They are selling sanitizer because of mass production. The same applies here. Because of mass production, the solar panel cost reduced, solar inverter cost reduced, so cable, the DC cabling cost reduced. Everything, the entire the infrastructure setup cost reduced, labor cost reduced. Because why labor cost reduced? You don't have to design a solar system for every household. So they created a cookie cutter system. Like okay, 100 square feet. This is the panel. They have ready-made libraries available. So you enter the area, then immediately it will tell this panel, this many number of panels, this much space, this is the angle, these are all the equipment you need. Buy it, install it. You don't have to design everything altogether. That saves a lot of time in engineering time, and so labor. Regularly, if he every day if he does one 100 kilowatt or 10 kilowatt commissioning, then it will be very easy for him. Like first time he may take 2 days, second time 1.5 days, third time like after 100 installation within a day he will finish, and because it will become more and more predictable. So that's how the cost is declining. And on the storage side, lithium ion, I told you before, like today it's $100 per kilowatt hour. But we are forecasting like in another 5 years, it's going to become $75. $160 it was 5 years before. By 2015, it was $150. Today it's 100. It's going to go down further because your demand is increasing, mass production, and lot of R&D is happening to optimize the cost. The solar wafer was the photovoltaic wafer was very expensive 15 years before. Today it has come down drastically because of lot of research and development happened in this area and mass production, all both contributing together.
Sir,
Yep.
we have a kind of a general question from Akshata.
Yes.
We are doing a simulation on DC microgrid using photovoltaic cells. We are getting a negative power on the grid. What may be the reason for this?
Negative power on the grid.
Yeah.
I don't get a negative power. What does it mean? Like you see, your system is drawing power from the grid, or system is pumping more power to the grid.
Yeah, if you could get a clarification on that, we can go forward to that question. For now, I think we can continue, sir.
Okay, good. So, so this also the kind of we discussed before. What is the contribution from different sources in our energy domain by 2 decades, like by 2040? So by 2040, renewables will account for 70%. That solar 47%, wind 19%. You know, I want to tell one thing about wind. So why the wind is going down? Earlier, by 1990s, so I have seen a lot of wind installation. Even if you go to Chitradurga area, you can see a lot of wind installation. And if you go towards the Kanyakumari down south, you can see a lot of wind installation. And if you see from Tirumala, Tirupati, in Andhra Pradesh, a lot of wind installations will be there. Whatever the installation was old, that 20 years old or 50 years old, so those windmills are, one windmill was of the capacity 250 kilowatt. But today, the technology has evolved. One tower is of 2 megawatt power. You can see the difference. One tower, 2 megawatt. But the 10 years before, one tower, 250 kilowatt. See that 8 times they have increased the capacity. So that one way it has increased the technology has improved and it has increased the efficiency, cost, all that. On the other side, because of 2 megawatt, not everyone can afford to put up a windmill in their land. So only the bigger companies can put. So that has reduced the percentage of wind energy. And also other reason, like lot of maintenance, like since it's a very lot of rotation, the mechanical movement is there, so you need to have a regular maintenance. And the birds will get killed by the windmill. That will change the blade orientation, because definitely if there is obstruction or if something happens, so then the blade movement will not be the smooth, and then you need to repair it. So that was adding a lot of complexity in the wind. Whereas in the case of solar, everything is static. Only your inverter will blow up, inverter will fail. Other than that, from the solar panel side, 20 years life. Normal life is 20 years or 30 years. Nothing will happen. If you put up a panel, just all you need to do is clean the panel from the dust. Because if there's a dust, it will affect it will reduce your conversion efficiency. Other than that, there is no maintenance. That is also another reason. Solar is more, wind is less. Okay. So declining cost of renewables and storage, and also addition to that, the commitment from the developing countries to reduce carbon footprint, all contributing to increase in renewable energy. So this will result in increased solar presence, increased energy storage system, which in turn will become a microgrid, and also grid automation and smart grid. So there is a minute difference between microgrid and smart grid. And so smart grid will handle the energy in large scale. Microgrid will be in small scale, but more or less the philosophy or topology base is similar. And smart grid is more of a demand and supply management. Like it will manage demand and supply very efficiently because it's very large in size. And if we achieve or if we manage all these four efficiently, so then it will contribute to rapid industrial growth. In turn, our GDP will be very high. So we have to co-create our future by dominating all these four, like 2 times faster growth in electricity and 10 times more digital devices or more connected devices, 82% decarbonized environment, and more decentralized. 70% of electricity will come from decentralized energy. So in summary, so we have to reshape our industry, transform cities, and enrich lives. Okay. Here, harmonize supply and demand with EcoStruxure grid. Supply and demand is a very crucial and critical one. This applies not only to the energy industry, but every industry. Supply and demand is important, very critical one. You know, take it from vegetable. Like tomato price, suddenly it will become 2 rupees or 1 rupee per kg, and then end up it, farmers will throw it in the road and throw all their tomato and go. All of a sudden, this tomato will become 20 rupees or 100 rupees per kg. Same for the onion. You know the reason? The only reason for that is inefficient management of supply and demand. If you manage supply and demand properly, the end user also will get an optimum price, and the producer also will get the optimum price. Both will not end up losing money. Suddenly, onion price will become 100 rupees per kg, so then consumption will come down. So this reduced consumption will increase the supply, then automatically price will come down. So like we don't have the right mechanism to manage the supply and demand. The same applies to electrical industry, energy domain also. Today, our electricity distribution company is not having accurate forecast of consumption. They don't know the consumption pattern. From my house, what is the consumption pattern? Electricity company is not having any idea. They will have some approximate forecasting methodology. Like that's a very crude way of forecasting, but they don't have accurate forecast. You see, if any of you are having credit card, you can go to there will be an option to see your consumption analysis, like your spending analysis. So they will precisely predict your spending pattern. Even if someone has Google Analytics, go to Google Analytics. They will tell if you are hosting a website on your domain in your name, you can enable Google Analytics and go to Google Analytics page and say, okay, so your user, whoever is visiting your website, so this will visit us from this area, and this time your web page is having more traffic, and based on that, this will be your forecast. Whereas in the case of energy, that is not the data is not available with the utility companies. They don't have the forecast. When I will turn on my ceiling fan, when I will turn on my grinder or air conditioning system, so that forecast is not available with the utility company. Whereas by having microgrid or smart grid, they do a lot of it's all based on the data analysis. Your energy management system is based on the data. So it will enable you to optimize your generation and as well as your consumption pattern. So that is what here we talk about harmonize the supply and demand. So for doing this supply and demand harmonization, you need more data. More data, that is big data, and then artificial intelligence. The combination of these two, we can achieve the supply and demand management. Hello. Any questions? Hello. Can I continue? Am I audible?
Sir, sorry for that. My audio was acting up. Please continue, sir.
Okay. So you see here the energy transition, energy management, and industrial automation will contribute to higher energy efficiency and increased productivity, reliability, and safety, then sustainability. So this will lead to increase in growth. The buildings will be more efficient, our data centers will be more productive, our infrastructure will be more reliable, and then industry will be sustainable. So this data we discussed, I will skip this. Again, another concept, cloud. So cloud is another buzzword. Today, everything is IoT based, IoT enabled devices. Like even whatever the product we develop today, we have a philosophy. The product should have an edge control. Edge control is nothing but it should have a human interface, and then you should be able to control it. That is edge control. Second one, remote control. You should be able to control it remotely, even from a little far off from that device. Third one, cloud control. So I can control a plant which is located in different continent. Like for example, in North America, if there is a plant, I should be able to control it from here. If we have time, I can demonstrate. So like we have our own monitoring platform, monitoring and control platform, IoT enabled platform. I can show you how a solar system in somewhere in Alaska or somewhere in California, and how I can control that plant. I can change the parameter from here, from sitting in Bangalore, I can control a plant in Alaska. If time permits, I can demonstrate that as well. So that is like a edge computing to cloud computing, and grid also. Like today we have the decentralized system enabling us to do cloud control. So everything is decentralized. No, so nothing is centralized. Like earlier, even today, like during lockdown, there was a day like everyone was asked to, Prime Minister asked everyone to turn off their light to show some sort of solidarity with the doctors and the health workers. So that time, what happened? There was a huge speculation that everyone turns off their light, the grid will go unstable. I hope you guys would have received the WhatsApp message on that. Don't turn off your AC, don't turn off your fridge or other system, only turn off your light. Otherwise, our grid system will collapse and blackout will happen. Then the regional dispatch centers were prepared to manage this fluctuation, load fluctuation. So they ensured that everywhere the demand and supply will be coordinated. By going decentralized system, this type of problem will not come. Everything will be like the problem will be local, and the effect will also be local. The centralized, the effect will not be centralized. Today, everything is centralized, so effect will also be centralized. If something happens in somewhere, so that everyone will see a blackout. Everyone will face power outage. But if you go decentralized, like the problem will be localized, effect will also be localized. And then digital, everything is digital. So this also, I will skip this. Now we are coming to our core topic. I think we have time, right? So can I continue?
Yes, sir. I think we have some more time. We can skip through. I mean, go through this, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, one question has come. Something similar to previously asked. The first one was we are doing a simulation on DC microgrid using PV cells. We are getting negative power on the grid. What's the reason? She has supplemented that with grid is supplying power to the load.
Grid is supply. Then your PV system is very less. So you might have a load connected in your system, in microgrid. So your load is like, for example, your PV is giving 1 kilowatt, load is 2 kilowatt. Then definitely that 1 kilowatt will be drawn from the grid. That will be the scenario. You need to check your PV generation, how much is the PV generation and how much is the load. So you match or reduce the load from the PV, like 1 kilowatt is PV, make 900 watts as your load. So then you will not see this negative.
So there's one more question from Mr. Guru Kiran. Say there is a fault in a grid which needs to be solved within a few seconds. Since cloud has latency and delay related to network, how is it handled?
Yeah, so that's why the edge control. So we need to have like both. Edge control will be faster response. We need to have that edge control. Without edge control, no system is reliable. You will, because the cloud will bring lot of uncertainties. The internet connection will break, or it will introduce a lot of latency. Suddenly something will happen. Some hacking will happen. So we should not rely 100% on cloud. Cloud you can rely only for data. For control, wherever you need a precise control, you have to depend on edge control. So that's it. Like edge control, remote control, and the cloud control. So 3 layers are there. So wherever you need a faster response, high reliable action, then edge control. Relatively less reliability, less less speed of action, remote control. The cloud will come third. If you need a faster response, don't go for cloud. Go with the edge control. Okay.
Sir, yeah.
That's it. We can't automate 100%. You can automate to some extent. Wherever the human intervention is not required, those things can be automated. But there are certain things where you need to have a human intervention. That is indispensable. Otherwise, then we will not have a job. Okay. So photovoltaic. So now this is now only we are entering into our topic. There are types of panel like monocrystalline, polycrystalline, and amorphous. So the majority of panels are today of polycrystalline. Monocrystalline panels are not there because they have a lot of leakage current. And solar panels are constant current source. So that's why the rating you can see is short circuit current 5 ampere, 9 ampere, 2 ampere like that, because it's a current source. It's not a voltage source. And panels, so 300 watts and even 450 watts panels are there on 6-inch. Amorphous cell we are using mainly in appliances. Like calculator will have amorphous cell, but for PV generation we don't use amorphous cell because of efficiency, cost, all that. Sorry. So then again cells, 6-inch cell, 250, 300, even up to 450 watts. But 300 watts panels are predominantly used. So it's a constant current source. So always we should design the DC system for short circuit current. So for example, 9 ampere is your short circuit current. Your cabling and your switch gear, everything should be designed for 9 ampere current, not for your nominal current. Nominal current may be 7 ampere or 6 ampere. That is maximum current. But you should design for short circuit current. If you design for maximum current, what will happen? If there's a short circuit, your entire cabling will burn. So you need to replace the cabling. So to avoid that, you should design for short circuit current, or we can call it as absolute maximum. Okay. So I hope this is self-explanatory. You can understand. And so like in solar PV system, like one panel, 6-inch panel, if you take 300 watts, so many cells are connected in series parallel combination. And the panel voltage will be of a 70 volt or 60 volt. Again, it's subjected to temperature. If higher the temperature, voltage will come down. If lesser the temperature, voltage will go up. So again, irradiation, morning the irradiation will be less, noon time irradiation will be peak, and evening gradually it will decline, and once the sun sets, irradiation will become zero. So then you will not see any generation. That time voltage also will become zero. So that's how the solar panel operates. So here 31 ampere is the nominal operating current, normal operating. That is maximum current, Imax. Imax is 31 ampere, and ISC, short circuit current, is 40 ampere. So your design should be for 40 ampere, not for 31 ampere. So this is the solar system. Like for example, if you have a panel, you need like today solar systems are coming with 1000-volt system. Like if I put up a plant in my rooftop, I will have a 1000-volt system. Earlier it was 600-volt system. Now it's a 1000-volt. But as a lot of work is happening, R&D is happening for 1500-volt system also. So the difference is like 600-volt system. Why it was earlier 600? Because the insulation system was not matured enough for handling higher voltage. That's the reason it was at a lesser voltage. Now the insulation technology also improved, so 1000-volt system. In residential purpose, it's not allowed to have 1500-volt system. The reason for that is again the insulation system, because the more the voltage is nothing but a pressure between two terminals. So the more the pressure, more will be the risk of electric shock. Lesser the voltage, less will be the electric shock risk. But what is the advantage by having higher voltage? Because your current will be less for the same power. Like 1000-watt power, 1000-volt. If you want a 1000-watt system, 1 kilowatt system, voltage is 1000-volt. Like current will be only 1 ampere, and your losses will be directly proportional to current. That is I squared R loss. Heat loss is nothing but I squared R loss. So lesser the current, lesser will be the I squared R loss. More will be the efficiency. So to reach that, we go higher voltage, but we can't increase the voltage beyond certain limit, because the insulation is important and the safety is also important. So we need to strike a balance between voltage and current, so that the 1000-volt is somewhat acceptable from safety perspective, and also good for improving the efficiency. So when you design a 1000-volt DC system, PV system, you need to connect more number of panels in series and parallel combination to reach required watts. There is required power and required voltage. Okay, so early morning, you see that your panel will see high voltage because current will be less, and it's a function of temperature. Voltage is the negative temperature, positive temperature coefficient. So your temperature is less, voltage will be more. If the increase in temperature, voltage also will decline. So that's all. So here you see current starts to flow. So this is the current, this is voltage. Morning 6 a.m. no current because irradiation is very less. High voltage, you see. This voltage will be some 900 volt in a 1000-volt system. The moment by 7:30, 8 o'clock, current starts to flow because so sunlight will be little brighter. So you'll see some irradiation. Current will be there. Then voltage will see a dip. Suddenly voltage will decline, and then so the product of these two will be the power. Then as we move on in a day, gradually current will also increase. So then at noon time, current will be maximum. Then after that, the sun start to set, and then it will decline. So normally solar panels are oriented. The panel orientation will be north-south, not on east-west. You know why? East-west, if you keep your panel, morning you will get a lot of irradiation, but after noon time, your irradiation will go less. Reason for that is the sun trajectory is east to west. That's why we keep northwest. North-south. But tracking systems are there. But tracking system, if you add tracking system, that will add capital investment. Every panel should have a tracking system, and then a lot of maintenance. We want to go zero maintenance in solar. No? If you put a tracking system, then since there is a mechanical movement, it may go bad. You need to maintain it properly. So that's the reason. But so like again, return on investment, if you see with the tracking system, without tracking system, if you consider a capital investment, it's more or less safe. So that's the reason nobody is going with the tracking system today. So this is in a solar inverter. Normally they will have maximum power point tracking. So maximum power point tracking is so during that window it will exert a maximum power. Like for example, if you take this is the morning 6:30 and this is 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock system wakes up. System start to pump power, and then this is 11:30. So 11:30 to 3 o'clock it will be on maximum power. Then after that gradually it reduces. And then by 6 o'clock it will become a dark, and then inverter will be offline. So here it will reduce less power because irradiation will be less, current will be less, and then here it will pump full power, and then again it will give derated power. This is how solar inverter will operate. So like morning time, here you see like voltage. So the voltage will be less here. Even the moment current comes up, voltage will further come down. So in a 1000 volt system, the voltage morning voltage will be like 250 volt. Here 250 to 430 volt. Your 1000 volt system will be designed to operate like how a solar system will be designed. In a inverter there will be a DC link, because the inverter operation starts from DC link. So you need to maintain a common constant DC link voltage. To maintain constant DC link voltage, solar voltage is fluctuating. You see here, like based on the time, voltage will vary. So like early morning 250 volt, so 150 volt is a wake up voltage, 250 and 430, and then 800, like that it goes. But you need to fix the DC link voltage. How you can achieve constant DC link voltage? You need to have a boost converter. In the morning time, you need to have a boost converter, so during this period it will boost the voltage, so that you can maintain constant DC link voltage. So that's what it is, the boost operation. For the Asian countries and European countries, 400 volt system, we adapt 400 volt AC system. So your boost voltage should be greater than or equal to 565 volt. How we calculate this 565? 400 volt is RMS voltage of AC system, and then you need to calculate the maximum voltage, like √2 into Imax into IRMS. So the 400 is IRMS into √2 will give you peak voltage. So your DC link voltage should be greater than or equal to your maximum voltage of your AC system. Then only the inverter will be stable. Otherwise, there will be a reverse flow. Feedback will be there from grid to. So now somebody said your microgrid, you see negative flow. So this type of things will happen when you design like that. So always your DC link should be maintained greater than or equal to your peak voltage of your AC system. So whereas in North America, 480 volt system, for a 480 volt system, it should be 680 volt peak. So your DC link should be 680 volt. So to maintain this voltage, you need to have a boost converter, because you see here 430 volt is coming. So 430 volt should be pumped up to 565. So you need a boost converter. So for boost converter, boost operation, like you need inductor and capacitor to store the energy. Then by using proper switching mechanism, you can boost the voltage so that your DC link voltage will be maintained. And so to increase the maximize the yield, solar yield, what normally they do, like I'm having a 10 kilowatt system, but I will put my solar panel for 15 kilowatt or 13 kilowatt. You know why? By 10 kilowatt system, I get this solar curve, but I want to maximize my production in this region also. So this is my maximum power point region. So to achieve that, I need to increase my PV panel. Like my inverter is 10 kilowatt inverter, but I put panel for 13 kilowatt or 14 kilowatt, so that I will get maximum 10 kilowatt production this area also, morning also. Like instead of this is 11:30 means, so this will become 10:30. So like I can increase my maximum production duration. So that's what, like a higher DC AC ratio. That also normally people do, but I can't do over design, because I need to have a break even or trade off where I will get the maximum yield. I can, so 10 kilowatt system, I can put 20 kilowatts so that I will get a flat curve always. No, that is not the case. Then your capital investment will be more and the return on investment will be very, very less. And then shade tolerant, like a PV panel, 6-inch panel we saw. Suppose above the panel, if there is a cable, telephone cable or your TV cable line is passing through, so then there will be a shading. So that shading will affect your maximum operating point. Always you use the perturb and oscillate technology, P&O technology, to fix the operating point to the maximum. So the shading, even if you are having a rooftop and the chimney is there, the chimney shadow will affect your operating point. So you need to have also some bird droppings, like bird droppings, or even dust, uneven dust will also cause a shift in your operating point. You need to have a proper algorithm. The MPPT algorithm should be shade tolerant so that you will get a maximum power point always. I discussed about the oversizing. So this is a grid voltage. So this is the inverter block diagram. Like this is a PV system. So as I mentioned, input, there will be a filter on the DC side. So just to filter out all the ripples, and then DC link. Sorry, this is again a filter boost. Before boost converter, there's a filter, and then boost converter, DC-DC converter, and then DC-DC converter comes to the DC link. So then DC link will feed to inverter. So like again, multiple, the inverter topologies are different. Two-level inverter, three-level inverter. So the three-level, even five-level inverters are there. So with the three-level inverter, you will get less ripples on the output. Like harmonics will be less. Whereas two-level inverter, harmonics will be more. Five-level inverter, even more harmonics will be less. But again, you will have more number of switches. So switching losses will be more. So you need to strike a balance. Switching loss, conduction loss, and harmonics all should be managed properly so that you will have a higher efficiency. So then output, AC output will pass through AC filter and then connecting relays. So this relays plays a major role in synchronization. I told about dark law method, bright law method. So here the synchronization happens with the grid only. So the signals will be drawn from the grid. There will be a PWM, the digital signal processor, which will supply PWM to your boost as well as to the inverter. So we take the reference voltage from the grid. So the reference voltage from the grid, so that your PWM will be matching with the reference, so that your inverter R phase and the grid R phase will be same, so that there will not be any circulating current. Like your R phase should be positive max, then your inverter R phase should be positive max. That's when you should close the relay. So the relay closing will be synchronized with your reference signal and your PWM signal, so that everything will be in sync at the right time. Your relay will close, so that there will not be any circulating current and the parallel operation will be successful. So that's a block diagram of inverter. Then off-grid system, off-grid or hybrid system. You have the DC link. The DC link basically there will be a battery, then converter and AC. It's a bidirectional converter. When you want to charge the battery, AC to DC, then you discharge the battery DC to AC. And if you combine a solar system also along with it, then battery will charge directly from the solar DC. It will not do additional conversion. Then if you want to charge battery from grid, the bidirectional converter will work on during that time. So it's like your BMS, battery management system, will take the decision whether to charge from grid or charge from the PV source. But your BMS will be programmed in such a way that always the preference will be given to charge from DC, because that is your renewable generation. So this is a hybrid system. You have both the grid is also present and the PV system also present, and storage system and UPS. So loads will be classified into critical and non-critical. So critical loads will be served always from UPS, because if grid goes and solar also not there, your critical loads will be taken care. Like for example, critical loads are lighting loads, lift is a critical load, and your data center, all that will be critical load. we should ensure there should not be any power outage for these loads. And then non-critical load, like any other lighting load. For example, if you take a household, washing machine is a non-critical load, a microwave oven is a non-critical load. So you can time it based on the need. And then energy storage system, the energy management system, we should take care of the supply and demand and the tariff. Like if grid tariff is high, so then turn off all non-critical load, supply only critical load. If your battery is having sufficient energy, so then use non-critical load. So like that. So that should the intelligence will be built on your energy management system. Again, this is similar hybrid system. So few slides I just ran very fast considering the time, because that is available. The literature is available in internet also. You can browse through, or you can reach out to me if you have any specific question. So in a nutshell, so life is on everywhere, everyone, and every moment. So that's it from my side. So it's a pleasure sharing my viewpoint with you guys. Please let me know if you have any questions we can discuss.
It's a pleasure having you, sir. I'm sure everyone has taken something new out of this webinar. We have understood what you're working on and what and how the future technologies would be going on. If anyone has any other additional questions, I think we can have a couple more questions, and then we can end. Anything else you'd like to say, sir, about the industry in common, or anyone who wants to get into this industry, or for researchers as such?
Yeah, my simple recommendation would be have strong basics and the right attitude. Definitely, you will find an opportunity. But what I see today is like you have higher marks. We are chasing marks, but we same time we don't have the strong basics. If I want to design a filter, how I should design a filter, you should know. You should be able to tell it. If I have more DC component, which filter I should use, which I have if I have more AC component, what I should do. So these are simple basics. That's part of your curriculum, but we don't see it as an end application. We see it as just scoring marks. So change your approach. Try to understand the end application. For example, in DC machine, armature reaction. Armature reaction I have studied. When I studied, I did not understand completely. Nobody explained me properly. That is also another reason. But today, the technology is there. Like a lot of animated videos are there to understand the armature reaction. A lot of MIT professor videos are there. You search in YouTube. One professor has explained field theory in a very, very phenomenal way. So nobody can explain better than that. When I studied field theory, I did not understand completely. Just for me, it was like all our mathematical equation. I found it very difficult. But after seeing that video, I regret when I studied at that time, these videos were not available. So you use that internet today properly, so that you will understand the basic, you will understand the end application. So then you will not find it very difficult. If you do that, definitely you will find an opportunity and you will develop passion out of it.
Yes, sir. Okay, we haven't got any new questions in the time being, but so I think we can go to an end. Sir, about if anyone would like this video will be shared to all the people who have registered on the GoToWebinar page, and we'll be putting it up on our YouTube page, on our UVC YouTube page. If you have any queries or other personal questions, as sir has told before, we'll be sharing sir's email as well. You can reach out to him personally for your doubts and clarifications. That's it from me. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, sir, for making this webinar, a good turnout and a good show.
Yeah, thank you very much. Wish you all the best for your future and completing your course. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think we'll be ending it now. Thank you.